Welcome to Deep Thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. Let me ask you this. If I had a magic wand and I could wave it at you, and the second I wave it at you, you were no longer jealous about anything in your entire lifetime. Your entire life journey from that point forward is ignorant and permanently incapable of conceiving of jealousy. You hear the word, you hear someone describe the definition to you, and at no point in your life from that point forward does it make any sense. And therefore, your desires on a daily basis are simply based on your preferences for life. If there's something missing out of your life, an object, a place, or thing, or a person, you simply make a plan, do what you need to do, and go get it. You know, some things are going to be very easy to get because you can go to the department store and part with a little bit of money. Some things you might be able to create with your bare hands. And other things might require you to improve your character or to display your character to another human being to entice them to be a part of your life. But from that point forward, you are completely and utterly focused on what you want in life because you're not being distracted by this thing we call jealousy. So you saw this episode title and you're like, oh my God, he's going to do one of those. Talk about jealousy. Well, to the degree that what I just demonstrated in words would be a mind-blowing improvement to your life, or would have been a mind-blowing improvement to your life, this episode will be very interesting to you. Because I asked myself, we know what jealousy is. We want something that we don't have, but someone else has it. It always has to require someone else. Hey, I could sit in my living room and go, I want to have a bigger television, or I want to have an amazing wife, I want to have amazing kids, or whatever the hell I want. Just name it. That's just desire. And you might even be sad that you don't have those things. But you can deal with those emotions, and you can use that as the mother of invention to go get what you want in life. But the second that you focus yourself on someone else having it, perhaps them having it was the very first time you realized that thing is havable. And so now you're like, oh my God, I want one of those. Especially if you go and experience it someplace else. You experience a 100-inch television, and you come home to your little 40-inch television. You're like, oh my God, this is embarrassing. Now I know why my friends think things about me, which is wrong. But you believe that. But isn't it weird how little kids have it almost automatically, and no parent has to indoctrinate their child into this? Your kid sees another kid with a toy. They want the toy. They want to play with the toy. Just seeing the love, maybe even feeling telepathically as children, the other child loving that toy creates a little stream of consciousness that your child sees and feels and goes, oh my God, I got to have that experience right now. And they go over and try to take it because in their brain there is no limitations, there's no courtesy, there's no wait your turn, there's no concept of mine and yours. It's mine, 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 mine. Jealousy destroys lives. Jealousy preoccupies lives, and jealousy keeps you from ever being focused. Jealousy makes it almost impossible to develop a plan in some cases. Now, there are plenty of people that have gotten things in life because of their jealousy, and they were smart enough to route it back into the mother of invention and the plan that was going to get them what they wanted. There's a lot of rock stars today who became rock stars because when they were slightly too young to be one, they saw other rock stars have fame and money and love from a crowd. And they said, that's what I want. So they picked up the guitar, they picked up the mic, they picked up the sticks, and they started playing. And they sucked at first, and then they got good. And they kept pushing everything else aside, as a matter of fact, until someone heard them one day who had the power to give them promotion and a record contract and a tour and an album, albeit now online. And then they stepped through that membrane that they couldn't step back through. which is you are now officially phenomenal at what you do. And just like a college degree or anything else you learn in life, it's very hard for anyone to take it away from you. Now, every rock star has about a 10 to 15 year lifespan, unless you become an ultra mega hit, and then you can have a lifetime of it. But what I like to think about when I think about these sorts of bizarre moments that seem to happen out of the human programming that are so profoundly acidic, without indoctrination, as a matter of fact, that I like to think of other moments when we can kind of understand the human mind a bit. Now, I used to think in the Genesis, the book of Garden of Eden, right? After Eve eats the apple, a bunch of stuff goes to hell, right? Most demonized women right from the very beginning, right? But they didn't wear any clothes, as the story goes, and they were blissfully naked. The weather was good. Everything. There's plenty of soft things to lie down on. There were animals, but apparently no predators. Cool. And then this apple thing happens, and the devil, worked her up to it. And then God comes down. And I can't remember exactly who said which way the other thing, but I know God made a bunch of changes to punish both of them. But at one point, they were told that they were naked. And now all of a sudden, they needed to cover themselves. And it was interesting. They had to be indoctrinated into believing that the way that they were was not perfectly normal. And I used to think, well, that's the dumbest thing ever. Really? They just suddenly think that clothing is the way that they should be. I mean, what'd you do? Show them a Sears catalog and say, this is what clothing are. See all those models in there? Wait, there's no other human beings on Earth. So I don't know how they got this instantaneous self-loathing in the metaphorical story that is Genesis. But then I was watching this Peruvian jungle video where undiscovered tribes were starting to bump into the civilized Peruvian citizens and some scientific anthropologists. And the first video I ever saw of them, this guy crosses the river. There's about a dozen of them. They're traveling in pairs. It's very interesting. One of them was definitely the loudest and talked, and he comes across the water. Of course, they're freaked out a little bit because he's got long spears, and I think some of them had arrows, and they're huge. They're super long. They're like probably 4 or 5 foot long arrows. And they immediately went into the huts, which were all kind of exposed. Didn't have full walls. Didn't need it. It's all warm. And they started stealing clothing. And then I kept watching the series, and it went on for at least a year of continuing to communicate with these individuals as they started sharing their language, and they finally figured out how to communicate, which dialects and which root languages were there, and then they studied words and they worked together. And then the kid, about a year later, is fully clothed in a shot, which looked really strange. And he actually said the line right out of the Bible. He said, he goes, when I saw you guys wearing clothing, he said, I immediately got jealous that you had this. And when I put on a shirt and I put on a pair of pants and I put on some shoes, like sandals, and I realized how amazing this is to have some warmth and some protection on my body, I felt so embarrassed that we hadn't invented clothing, because he was just wearing a little string down south. That was it. Some makeup, stuff in his hair. That was about it. And then eventually his tribe all became clothed. And of course, that created the bubble of jealousy within all of the other undiscovered tribes. And those other tribes, they're all brutal, man. He was talking about it. He goes, man, they come down and they kill us. And my parents were genocided and da-da-da-da. Not technically completely genocided because they're all sort of the same race. But according to their tribal definition, they were at the water where this river went through because they were pushed to the water by the other tribes. The nice thing about these subjects is that you have plenty of experience in it, usually. And some people will lie and say, oh, I don't have any jealousy in my life. Well, all right. Great. Then you must be the most successful, most happy person on planet Earth. Now, you can definitely, and most definitely will achieve a very nice plateau in your desires versus your accomplishments and perhaps material possessions and what have you. But usually a human being can always think of something that they want that they don't have. Part of this show is making sure you have total and utter control over your life, right? Well, jealousy is a gigantic sort of topic that we don't typically talk about. I mean, think about it. How many times, for as corny as this episode might be titled and it might seem, okay, how many times have you sat down with your parents and had a decent, in-depth discussion about how to manage what jealousy is, how to manage it? Dude, when you went to high school and college, let's say for those of you who have degrees, maybe some of you have PhDs. Maybe some of you in psychiatric divisions have had these conversations, but think about it. You had to get a PhD to get it, most likely. These are fundamental emotions of life that destroy the quality of life. And we don't even talk about it. We don't talk about it a little bit. We don't talk about it a lot. What do marketing firms try to do for products? They try to make you lust after the product. They want to make you feel inadequate that you don't have the product. In some cases, they're right on point with trying to make you very jealous that you don't have a particular product and someone else does. There's the whole keeping up with appearances, as it's really referenced in Great Britain. Here, we call it the Jones-me syndrome, right? Your buddy next door buys a boat. Well, shit, you got to have one now. My neighborhood's hilarious. When I first moved in here, nobody had a boat. Nobody had an RV. Nobody had a golf cart. Nobody had a jet ski. Okay. And then one guy buys it, and about 4 other guys have to buy it. It's unbelievable. If you drive up and down my street, it looks like, someone has invited every every relative from Kansas to come here and just park out front, like Vacation, the movie. One guy bought a golf cart, another dude bought a golf cart. Crazy. They temper their jealousy by immediately grabbing the tail of the guy in front of them and getting the same thing. I have no idea if there's any, spousal pressure where they go, well, if you were a winner, you'd have an RV. If you were a winner, you'd have a golf cart. And then there's pressure. I know in some cases the dudes who go first, they get reprimanded for spending that money. And then later on, when 3 other dudes buy the same thing, I'm sure that reprimand subsides over time. And there's, I guess materialism, consumerism, trying to make yourself happy by getting possessions. There's a whole division of jealousy in that, which is probably the medium level jealousy. It's medium. You might look at someone else's career, someone else's wealth bracket, how much money you think they have in the bank, which is usually completely wrong, even if they tell you. But in some cases, let's just say someone's jealous of Steve Jobs when he was alive because he was a billionaire and he ran his own company and he created the most incredible things with the most incredible people. Someone might have found themselves jealous of that kind of lifestyle, or at least of the wealth, of the reward that comes from it. They don't want to do the work, but they definitely want the money. That's what I find in life is people who think that it's just easy to become these people. There was the big thing about how much money Donald Trump inherited from his father, and he's got siblings who all agreed on the number, and they're like, yeah, if we got the same amount he got, there's not more to him and less to us, and we know what we got, and it's this, right? And then they think that, I think the highest number I ever heard was something like $10 million. I think he said it was like 1 or 2. But then he turns it into this $10 billion empire. And people will It's usually what I would seriously call, a peasant, which doesn't mean how smart you are or how much money you have. It means how you perceive the world in a petty way. They will say, well, he got money. It's easy to make money when you got money, and, making $10 billion out of even 50. Let's make it 100. Let's make his father give him $100 million, and he turns it into a $10 billion empire. And they'll say, well, that was easy because he had money. Oh, yeah? Well, I know a lot of people worth $10 million or more, and they are nowhere close to doubling that. In fact, most of the investors I know had finite moments in their life where they made a ton of cash, whatever they made, and they have never earned a significant dime after that. So if making money was easy, then you would have your shot without doing much work. And the sad thing is that, let's say there's someone out there that actually might have the tenacity to be a Donald Trump. You could substitute whatever. He's easy because he took nothing and made it something huge, right? But if they get too much into the hate game and the jealousy game, then what do they miss? They miss the brilliance of the man that made it happen in a particular era. You're going to have to come up with new techniques for your era, but then again, he was a genius in his era. But if somebody minimizes it to deal with their jealousy, then they're missing the entire theme and algorithm of what you have to do to get rich, if that's what you really want, if that's what you think you want. And believe me, if you have never been something in your life, ever, and you think you want to be that thing, I need to throw a big warning sign at you. You have no clue whether or not you can be that or whether or not you would like to be that. There's so many friends of mine that wanted to be musicians until they found out they had to write music. And they had to write it incessantly for 10 years. And not only did they have to write music, but they had to write top 10 hits. That's what they're supposed to do. You need to write a song that the whole world at any one point in time is going to buy so many copies of that you're going to hit a chart. In whatever genre of music, which when I grew up, there weren't that many genres, and now there's so many genres, you could have the number one hit in, some version of techno electronic music, and no one else in the world knows you exist, but everybody in that industry does, but that's only 100,000 kids or 500,000 kids, so you're trying to go gold, which is 500,000 copies sold. You can't even make it, because you can't get every single kid who listens to that type of music to buy your song. Plus, with piracy, good luck. What are other forms of jealousy that go up much deeper and much more intense than that? Love jealousy is probably one of the worst little tornadoes you can get yourself involved in, because it's irrational as irrational could be. But let's look at the fundamentals real quick, because some people might argue with me on that. What if someone looks a particular way and society as at large thinks that that's not attractive? However you look, maybe 1 year red hair is something, and the next year blonde hair is something, next year brunette's something. And so you're always trying to chase a trend because you're trying to get what other people perceivably have for the reasons that you think they got those things. So you might look at someone who is being celebrated for being very attractive, and you think you're not. Well, I would say up until the internet's existence, you may have falsely deduced that there's no one for you, that there's not a single person out there that would look at the way you look and find you utterly attractive, or the way you behave, the way you talk, the way you might tell a joke, the way you might be introverted and quiet. Maybe you're a book type person. You read more than you dialogue with individuals. Though the internet has proven beyond the shadow of a doubt, there are large groups of people for every type of human being that exists on this planet. It doesn't matter what size, shape you are, whether you have a speech impediment, whether you're a burn victim or whatever. There is someone out there that will love you more than you can process, meaning they will love you more than you can digest it. You just got to find them. But then there's circumstantial situations, which I run into here quite a bit, which is, and I'll give you an example. This isn't the only way this happens, but I think that most of you will have this in your neighborhood, and you might even be one of these people who are fortunate enough to do this. And I want to digress for 1 second. There's nothing cooler than someone who's been given this opportunity who still behaves in a very humble manner. And I've met almost unanimously these kind of people, which is very cool. But in Southern California, there's obviously a tremendous amount of money, like crazy money, okay? Some of the richest people on planet Earth have homes here. They may not stay here 24/7, 365, but they own them and they come and visit. But because there are so many families that have been here for such a long time, some of them got rich because they bought property when this place was considered nothing. They hung on to it. It appreciated. They flipped it and sold it and invested against their equity and were able to get more homes and create a business or whatever it was. But we have a plethora of trust fund babies in Orange County, California, meaning children of extremely wealthy people who never have to work because as soon as they hit 18, they get a nice allowance or they get all their inheritance or what have you. It's always different. But I'll be down at the beach. I'll be getting a taco from some place down there, especially during summer. And you'll see, the hottest Lamborghini, brand new. I mean, the $1 million ones, not the $100,000 ones. With just kitted out, just crazy, amazing things, Bentleys and Rolls Royce Phantoms that are all tricked out, the most amazing things on planet Earth. And you see this in LA as well. And you will realize, and there's a really young person in there with another young person. Maybe it's a buddy or a girlfriend or something. And you'll see it and you're thinking, my God, that car is an amazing car. And I'm sure they live in a nice home. I'm sure it's down by some water somewhere. And you're thinking, gosh, I'd like to experience that, right now, in the future. I'd like to have that as an option in my life, to be able to have those things. So no one's immune, because it's almost guttural for your own goal setting. Now, what I'll do with that sort of thing is take it home. Take home the desire and really think it through. Well, I've been in extremely large homes before, not that I've lived in them. And I've sort of looked at the finances of them, how much tax it takes to keep the property mine, the upkeep on these big homes. I've dated people who've had gigantic homes and they've told me, look, we had any one particular day, 5 to 7 people just taking care of the house on an average day. If we're going to throw a party, we bring in 12 more to get the place ready. A girl I dated once who was divorced, she said as soon as they built the house, which she designed, it was gorgeous, amazing. She said, I never saw my husband, relatively speaking. Could never be nude in her house because there's so many people running around fixing up things. It kind of became a prison. Never saw that coming. 24-car garage downstairs, 2 Lamborghinis. Every single thing you can imagine was downstairs. Classic cars, brand new cars. It was unbelievable. This dude was damn near a billionaire. When she came out of it, which was her choice, it was a very amicable situation as I understand it, but she sort of fell out of love with most of it. Not all of it, but most of it. She got a decent-sized place. She has some finer amenities. It's in a decent neighborhood. She didn't want to go completely down to nothing. But she really got adjusted. I see this all the time in people. What is the disease of a hoarder? Outside of the cause, which is usually some sort of traumatic experience, a hoarder is trying to be happy with objects in most cases. Now, there's a lot of variations. So obviously, there's the hoarder that thinks that everything will become useful at some point in their future. They see this sort of fantasy future with a particular part or something. Like they find a broken down lawnmower and they think, oh my God, I would always wanted to learn how to fix a lawnmower. And they bring it home and they put it in the back and they never touch it again. The main thing I want you to focus on during this episode is this. Every minute you spend jealous of anything, you are losing out on you spending any time to get the thing that you want if you just focus. At the same time, we have to acknowledge that jealousy is just a fact of life that just happens to us. Now, what's interesting is to ride the bull of jealousy every once in a while, because it'll happen to you without your knowledge, right? Again, material objects are sadly probably the number one most consistent thing that happens to a human being in the modern age. Even that tribesman who wanted clothing, right? You see it, you desire it, and then there's two paths you can go on. Fork number one, which isn't so good for you, is you let it manifest inside you. You may even direct negative thoughts at the person who has it. And you might even engage in immediate dialogue about, oh, the guy driving Lamborghini is probably a douche and da-da-da-da-da. Or she's this and that, she's a spoiled housewife and da-da-da-da-da. Not realizing for any degree of time the sacrifices she might be making to have this lifestyle. There's a lot of beautiful housewives here in Orange County. And I mean, drop dead. They're in the gym 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. They're expected to have children. That's their main goal in life. And sometimes their husbands are really dapper, amazing, businessmen. And other times they're pretty not dapper. Okay. And I'm hoping that these people actually love each other. But I think a lot of these marriages are simply a business relationship. Because a woman has a time when she is healthy to have children, and then it becomes increasingly more difficult because of all the toxins in our foods to do that. And children end up suffering the more that the parents gain all the toxicity and try to multiply. So they want to get them out in and out early. Some of them have, I know for a fact, have these very clinical, prenups that says you must be married to me for 10 years and you get this amount of money. And if you can stay another 10 years, if we both choose to continue the relationship, you get this amount of money. The kids aren't even in the equation. They'll be 10 years old without both parents in the house, but because it's a business. So before you get jealous of other people, I want you to take a little bit of time out to role play out what their life is probably like. I've said it a couple of times on the show, when I really started hanging out with my rocker buddies from the 80s, and I heard about their lives. Yes, when they were in their 20s, they loved their lives, being famous rock stars and getting platinum albums and all that kind of stuff. That was good because they were in the age bracket that could do that kind of daily churn. They had a tremendous amount of energy. But once they hit 30, their bodies start changing. Once they hit 40, their bodies start changing. I feel extremely sorry for these rockers that feel obligated to continue performing when they don't have the body to actually do it anymore. Or, most of them would still love to be exactly like they were in their 20s, but, they got bad knee joints. I once saw Kansas play in my hometown in Kansas, which was the craziest, most surreal thing in the world. I didn't even know they were in town. And my town's teeny tiny, so it was a favor they were doing to another guy who was a millionaire in our hometown. Well, I watched this lead guitarist dude crawl up the back stairs to the concert. I could tell right away his knees were gone 10 years ago. He ripped the crap out of that guitar, I'll tell you that much. I mean, he was just as good as he ever was, if not better. But I see that and I think, gosh, it's like being a football player or anyone in any sports, but especially football because of the brutality on the body. And being a boxer, for instance, getting your head pounded over and over again. You think there's no permanent repercussions? I mean, some of these guys get out okay, but the dudes that go unnamed, these defensive linemen and these offensive linemen that are pounding each other, they barely ever get named, but they're taking on the broken legs and all this other stuff. There's the stories of these guys that have to have cranes lift them out of bed in the morning. Are you sure you're really jealous of all these other people in life? And we know that on both sides of the sexes, especially, well, there might be a really attractive female and a really attractive male, but that unmanaged could produce a really bad human being. And they could be wonderful in public when the camera's pointed at them because they understand there's a career to maintain, an image to maintain. But as soon as the door shuts, you never know what kind of jerks these people could be. We don't mean to cast aspersions on people as a solution to jealousy, but what you want to understand is that the grass is just like the grass on your side. Okay, sometimes it rains a lot and the grass looks fantastic. You don't have to even water your lawn. Other times it looks like, an alien burned a hole in your front yard. It just happens. There's an old saying in a Cheech and Chong movie called Things Are Tough All Over. And I didn't understand that at all when I was a kid. I actually worked and ran the theater when that came through as a kid. Things are tough all over. And it's true to a degree. But that toughness is actually what makes us who we are. I tell you guys I write all the time, right? So I do it full time now. It's my job. And I'm blessed to be in this situation. But I will tell you that I watch a Westworld, a Deadwood, a Carnival, even American Gods, and other great movies that are created out there. Secondhand Lion was one of the most masterfully written little movies I saw recently, made in 2003 with Robert Duvall and was it Michael Caine? I get jealous immediately of the amazing writing that is in these shows. However, all I do is I come home and try to upgrade my skill set to be that good by dissecting their writing. Watch any Tarantino movie and you should be humbled by his ability to capture the human condition in a scene. No matter what's going on. Nothing's going on. Everything's going on. He'll nail it either way. And I may not love every single movie that guy's ever made, but he's got a few gems that are utterly phenomenal. But now let's put a pin right in front of our eyesight here of jealousy. We understand that. We haven't talked about every iteration of jealousy and all the factors of it, but we all know what that is, right? Now let's introduce a new pin, which is called inspiration. Being inspired. Because that is what we need to be instead of jealous. So, I've recently had this conversation several times with 2 or 3 friends of mine. And the conversation will go like this, and it's definitely this way for me too. When I go out and I see perfection, I get inspired to be as amazing at what I do as the talent I'm seeing. And music is one of the greatest things to see when you see great live performances. And I have been blessed to see some of the best live performances on planet Earth. Instead of being jealous, most of us aren't sitting in the audience being jealous of people we love on stage. If it's your band, you are glad to be able to see them perform, to hear it live. Now, sure, you might for a moment think you want their lifestyle. Again, roll back to the other part of the conversation about the lifestyle they really live. I mean, how many of you would want to be in Nikki Sixx's shoes and shoot a metric ton of heroin in your body? No thanks, man. No thanks. Not my style. But you can see someone play the drums, Rob Zombie's drummer, who also plays for Black Sabbath. I always forget the guy's name. Most unbelievable drummer I've ever seen in my life. And I've got a best friend who's one of the most amazing drummers on this planet. But I see how amazing he is at it. And what it tells me right away is how hard does that person work to get to be that good. Now, of course, we can always turn on the radio today and listen to trash and realize, well, that is barely putting any effort in, and you get a record. Still, they work their asses off even to make crap, and that's the truth. What if you go to a museum and you see a just amazing work of art? You actually do sit in a Lamborghini, and hopefully you can take it around the block in some test drive, or your buddy lets you drive his. And you realize the modern ones especially are masterpieces. I mean, the most amazing vehicles made on this planet. There's a ton of others that are just as amazing, but that's one of them. And so you think, well, wow, two things. Is everything I'm doing in my life up to this level of perfection and detail? And if not, then great. Guess what? You got another thing for your list that when you think you're done, this is the key in life, right? When you think you're done, you stop and go, two things. One, could I make this particular idea, the way I've realized it, better? When I write scripts, this is what I have to do. And the thing I'm definitely have to do on my end is to go, well, should I be telling it a completely different way? And I mean flush everything I've written down and write a completely different script, same characters, same controlling idea, same themes, but achieve it in a different way that might end up with the finale that is more powerful than the one I originally conceived. Typically, you will not conceive of the very best thing in the world first. Sometimes that happens. They call it beginner's luck, right? It does happen. Think about all these bands that have a one-hit wonder. Well, what's the typical archetype of a band with a one-hit wonder? They just formed, they've been playing for a little while, and pow, they created this one-hit wonder very close to the beginning of their career. Now, there's a lot of bands that took a lot longer to come together than history knows, and they ended up creating a whole album full of great songs. But think about AC/DC's Back in Black. Bon Scott had just died. Brian Johnson comes in out of thin air. They write one of the best rock and roll albums on planet Earth that was on the charts for like 43 years. Then it fell off the charts, and I think it's back on it now. It's been in the top 100 albums on planet Earth. I would love to know how much money, gross sales, that album has made. Individual songs. It's amazing. So things can happen like that. But that's sort of like lightning in a bottle, isn't it? If it happens, well, that's great, but do you know how to replicate it? So inspiration is what we want to get out of these moments of jealousy. You will always be caught in moments of jealousy. It just happens. It just happens, man. When you were a kid, you had it. And even if you weren't a kid that had a lot of it, it just meant you probably learned how to control it very quick in your life. What I think society has lost in a really big way because of the get-rich-fast BS that's all over the internet, these commercials that run before videos on YouTube. It's always the guy in his garage with his Lamborghini parked in the back or something, and he's like, I know you think I'm crazy if I told you something it was impossible, but it actually is, and I've got 2 friends and 3 friends. Let me show you some screenshots of some BS statistics that will never happen again in history, and that's the way you should do it. It's the lottery life I just mentioned in another episode. Okay. You could play the lottery every day, I guess. But your odds are really low that anything's going to happen in your favor. Okay. It's going to make a lot of other people rich. But what I think we've lost is this notion that you must attempt to find what it is you really want in every category of life, which, my table of life, it's the self, work, and family. I say it in that specific order because usually that's how we incur life. You obviously are in your own skin first. You do have to get a job to pay the bills. If you're a man, your woman, which would be the third phase, is going to make sure you have a job before she decides to spend the rest of her life with you or attempt to do so. So it goes in those 3 categories. Then and your family is really your children, and then that extends to you becoming a grandparent and a great-grandparent until you exit this planet. Now, there are careers that you can just go sign up for, and they'll completely take care of you. Go join the military. They have it all worked out. You could join the military, have absolutely no clue what you want to do with your life, and they will tell you what to do. They'll give you a career. They'll test you. Say, oh, you're pretty good at this. You're not very good at that. If you go and study somewhere else and get better, we'll let you have give you a second chance on this other thing. But they pay you. We take care of our veterans better than we ever have on planet Earth now. Hopefully we're going into an era of peace. You can get in and out of the military without going and getting yourself killed. But they'll take care of you. But if you are the predominant majority, you will go into private sector, or you will become a self-employed person. Now, as I always say, you want to go off into private sector, I think, first to learn the pieces and parts. Unless you're an utter savant, you won't know how to you'll know how to make a product or a service, but you won't necessarily know how to do your accounting. And accountants are probably, and again, if you think you're good, I'm not talking about you, but I have never met a good accountant in my life. I have met probably 70% of them are complete fraudsters that will steal your money, manage your entire income incorrectly, proportionate to your timetable of earning money, and when you have to pay your taxes, they will disobey you and do what they want. Why do you think so many celebrities who have money end up suing their accountants / managers? Because they got had. They're vultures, man. So you better know about business before you run off and do that. If you want to incorporate and hand out shares to people, boy, you better know what you're doing. And the reason why I'm going through this in a jealousy episode is because what is the alternative to being jealous? Go make a plan. A plan is really step 2. Step 1 is to figure out, where's your goal? What do you want to do? It could be anything. A teeny tiny thing. It could be, I need to clean my bathroom floor. Oh, God, I hate doing that. Because, in 1 week, it's going to be just as disgusting as it is today. That's just a fact of life, man. And so, instead of fighting it, you take care of it. You make it part of your Sunday ritual or whatever. So Monday's great. You get all your clothes clean and your bathroom's clean. Your house is all right. You've vacuumed the floor. You've washed your sheets on your bed. It's just, you got to have your paradigm be not a problem. And you got to find out how you want to either change your life, or in some cases, a lot of you probably have the balance already and you're just trying to maintain. Well, in that case, your plan is to maintain. And believe me, you need a plan to maintain what you have, because stuff changes. Hopefully, with the change in America, we are not going to be facing a recession. Everyone's bailed out of that notion, except for some mass media, organizations trying to follow the European recession that's going on. It looks like America is going to be okay for a while. They wanted another recession last year because they will not let 10 years pass without a recession. It's just the rule. Okay. So if you've got a good job and you're making money, don't get too, don't rest on your laurels, as they say, too much. Because what will take place is that the economy will shift. It could be that the economy is doing great, but whatever you do gets replaced by a robot. You get older, and your company simply looks at you and goes, you know what, I can get a kid that's going to make mistakes, but he's going to be a lot cheaper than you. If your success is providing pockets of time, then you might go get more education in something completely different that actually could make you money. And you will find that planning is, quite frankly, one of the most exciting parts of the game. When I teach college students, usually in film schools, I teach, a few different subjects. One of them they love me to talk about is the gaming industry as it relates to film and television, because you're developing skills that can actually contribute quite a bit to storytelling and cinematic control of video games. And so there's always an opportunity for these kids to have that as an option, right? But I tell them that all projects are divided up into 40, 50, 9, and 1. First 40% of any project, okay, It's what I call the fun 40. It's just planning. It's brainstorming, and it isn't the stage where you're actually doing anything. But you have to do it. You cannot make a video game with 20 other people and not have a game plan. It'll just turn into mush. It'll turn into nothing. You'll never be able to hit a deadline because you're not all on the same page about what you're creating. Some guy thinks you're going to have this feature for the main character, and the person has a complete different perception. If it's the designer versus the programmer versus the artist, imagine the pieces that are missing. Then there's the next 50% of the project. And if you're all by yourself, this is going to be a very introverted experience, but it's where you really find out what you're made out of. You watch all the employees work on the next 50%, which is the first step of the implementation itself. You'll find out who comes in late, who stays up late to get things done, who creates quality products, who tries to pass off crap as a finished product without at least communicating, hey, I just put this together last night, I had 2 hours left before I went to bed. This is kind of sort of crap, but you get the idea. That's okay. But to pass off something like that as a finished product, it happens all the time with rookie kids, and you can find out whether or not you're going to hire them for the next project. But then I have what's called the brutal 9. You're entering the last 10% of the project. And this is something I've talked about a little bit, but when you have a project that you're going after, again, we're not going to be jealous anymore. We're going to go get what we want. This is important. The brutal 9 is, if you're by yourself, it can be translated as the difficulty rating of whatever you're trying to do is so high that you're going to think maybe God doesn't want you to do this. When you're working with other employees, it is where you're going to start getting emotional problems between people typically. People are going to be extra tired. They're going to be tired of being locked into the project. They can see their future in some other project, and they want out as soon as possible. And so everyone's snippy with each other. I usually tell my employees, like, look, in this phase, whatever anyone says that defends you, just don't take it personal, because we're all in that stage of being exhausted. If you have a good day, lend your rested soul into a situation to mediate and keep two people that are at their wits' end from, biting each other's head off. And the final percent, I call it the last man standing, which is this. And I've been through these phases quite literally, where in that last percent, when you have to polish out the last bugs in whatever you're doing, and again, if you're on a solo mission, it is literally trying to figure out when you're finished with something. When I write by myself, write my script that I have designed completely by myself, I don't have to answer anyone else, it is me deciding when to stop rewriting the script. When is it good enough? And sometimes just, getting rid of the glaring issues and trying to polish out and pace in your house for 4 hours straight, trying to figure out what one word should be to get the right thing communicated to the audience. Eventually you have to close the door on that script and put it away for at least a month or two. And if you come back, you'll see glaring issues and it'll be much easier for you. But when you have to deliver a product, like a video game, for instance, imagine someone trying to edit a big movie like a Star Wars film and trying to figure out, did we clip everything we can clip? Should we take that scene we cut and put it back in? I mean, that could go on forever, but you got to have a finish line. Otherwise, it just turns into this weird dream. But I've been in situations where there were, 12 coders and other participants, testers, working on a particular product. At the very end, on the very last day, when we blessed the Golden Master, this was for TurboTax way back in the day when it used to be called something else. It was my boss and I taking the Golden Master out to the warehouse to make 4 or 5 copies of it, just in case, the disk got destroyed or something. It's on a hard drive with the developer. But we needed to start duplication the very next day. And back in those days, you didn't hire out duplication of disks. They were actually 5 1/4 floppies. 3.5 inch floppies. We'd take every single computer in the entire company, disconnect it, bring it all out to the warehouse and put them in lines, and then accrue at night, after everyone's gone home, starting as early as possible, would feed in the disk and wait for the copy. And when it finished the copy, you'd eject the disk and you'd pull it out and put it in the finish pile. And imagine trying to keep track of all that. And so we had policies, it doesn't get a label until it's finished. And that we looked at a blank disk. If you weren't sure, you just put it in and get it duplicated again. You didn't even look back. You didn't test to see if it had an app on it. You just, just write on it again. So we would ship out, tens of thousands of these things that we would labor over the weekend and at night to do. So let's go back to jealousy and the pipeline of jealousy. Everything in life is a pipeline. It is the stages at which something occurs, and you manage each stage differently. When you're cooking, you have to go buy the ingredients, then you prepare the ingredients, then you mix the ingredients, then you put them in an oven or put them on a stove, and you and you're trying to time all these different dishes at the right time such that when the guests come over and your family's ready to eat, everything finishes at this crescendo and it's all done, right? The pipeline of jealousy is usually one of these experiences where you're having a normal day and it's not something you wake up with. You don't wake up necessarily. There's a lot of cases where you do. Let's just go at the easier version of it. But you're living your day. You're driving somewhere, doing something. And whatever it is that you desire is all of a sudden in your eyes. A person, place, or thing. And you're going to be sort of in that stunned phase where you're now seeing those visions from the outside. It's not truth from inside. It's stuff that's being projected at you, trying to get you all riled up. Now, in the past, perhaps, before this episode, if you hadn't managed it in the past, you probably fed into the black apple of jealousy. It was fed to you, it was offered to you, and you went, boom, and you start dreaming about this. And then you go into Kubler-Ross thing about why you don't have it. Your anger, denial, negotiation, and maybe acceptance of why you don't have it. But usually jealousy never has the acceptance phase. You just keep going in a loop. Well, I don't have it because I'm a certain race. I don't have it because my parents weren't rich. I don't have it because of this or because of that. Maybe some of that's correct. Maybe some of it's not correct. It doesn't change anything, though. It doesn't put it in your hands. Once blaming somebody fixes the problem, then I'll believe in blaming people for things. Well, they might be the cause, but blame is a different thing. Blame is like some sort of paycheck that's proverbially attached to the exercise. The pipeline of blame is I just need to inform this person that they're so responsible for my problem, and then someone outside me is going to fix this problem for me. It usually doesn't work. I mentioned this once before in an episode many, many years ago, but Will Smith, of all people, he's a Scientologist. I don't know if he got this from Scientology or if he got this from his own experience, but he said, look, when you don't have something that you want, he says, the only way you can get what you want is to go get it and devise a plan and take steps. Because nobody out there, this is what I always tell people, because it's been my experience as I observe both my reality and other people's reality. If you have someone in your life that really supports you in a way that actually takes tasks off your list of things to do, then you're the luckiest person on the planet, period. But I think 99.9% of us don't have anyone like that in our life. As a matter of fact, due to jealousy unmanaged in society, we have haters everywhere. And you might have a best friend who plays the best friend role and says all the things a best friend should say, but in the end, they're really jealous of you and they really hate any progress report that you can bring to the table that is you being closer to getting your goal. I write scripts. Okay, so who could support me in a way that's going to write my script for me? Nobody. I got to do it myself. I have to inspire myself every day when I get up. So when we get ourselves caught in that loop, you want to stop and realize, wait, I don't want this emotion to get out of hand, because it gets out of hand immediately. That's how you feel it in the first place. Try to turn jealousy into inspiration. maybe I want that thing. Maybe I really do want that thing. You look at that car that has a $25,000 brake job price and a $1,200 oil change price, and the license plate on the front costs $20,000 a year. And yeah, I want that. I want those problems in my life, right? A buddy of mine's looking for homes to move into in the next year or two. So he's looking to leave California, and which I think is nuts. When you grow up one place your whole life, it's a little naive to think you can just change your environment. It's all going to be great. But okay, let's say that's good for him. But he's looking at all these homes, and they're brand new homes that are for sale. Sometimes they're homes that are really super modern, very decent price, but they're in South America. And I look at those places and I think, some of these places are really modern and they're very cold. Like their whole personality is just very, it's like living inside a tin box. It's really strange. A nice pool and some cool, movie theater here and there. But in the end, you're kind of like, man, unless you're married with a family or you have a lot of close friends, being in this big gigantic container by yourself would only reinforce the one defect that he's trying to get rid of, which is being by himself. Imagine writing a movie where someone, maybe a 1 hour short, maybe it's a Black Mirror or something, where someone is finding themselves in an extremely envious situation. And through some device, through some magic wand mechanism of the episode, they are given the one-time opportunity, maybe by the devil, to swap consciousness. Maybe even there's a bunch of funny movies. There's even a funny video that does this. But you can swap consciousness with the guy or girl, or you can get rid of them. They just simply disappear. Your body vanishes, whatever. You don't like your life anyway. And so you go into this other person's body. They got the big house, the fancy car. Seems like they've got I'll just do it from a male perspective. Seems like they have the hot wife, as they say. And you suddenly get in that person's life and you wake up and you're like, oh my God, this is great. You're stretching in bed and yeah, she's right there. And the second she rolls over, she's hideous, maybe as a person. The phone rings and you pick it up and it's someone from the credit card company asking you why you haven't paid your credit card, which is $60,000 and climbing. Pure interest rates, you have no more credit. And this happens all day. There's 4 or 5 cards. You find out you're $200,000 or $300,000 in debt. You go to the kitchen and you find an envelope that's been opened already with a piece of paper on top, and it's got a big red writing on it, and it's a foreclosure notice. Through very quick dialogue with your wife, you realize your parents are dead and no one is coming to your rescue. But where you were before, you had a life, a job, maybe a little bit of debt, but not much. And you could have stayed in your world, but you thought that grass was greener on the other side. And you just got a big dose of, wow, jealousy just screwed me over completely. And maybe the guy, has got a doctor's appointment that day and he's got cancer. I mean, it just, you never know what you're getting into when you try to live someone else's life. I'll tell you one thing that a weird experience I had where I learned about exotic cars. I have a friend of mine who's a very wealthy real estate guy. And as a side thing, he dealt with exotic cars, and he had some amazing cars. I think he still has about half a dozen wild cars, man. But he had some famous cars too, owned by famous people, and these cars were probably $150,000 to $300,000 when they were brand new. But then he would walk around and tell me what he bought them for. He has an Alice Cooper car. It's just wild chop top. I think it's a Chrysler 300, but it has like a half a dozen to a dozen TVs in it. I mean, it's this wild car. He got it for I don't know if I can say, I think he got rid of it, but it's like $20,000, something like that, 25, something in there. But it probably cost Alice, I don't know, 150 to have it made. The cars were going off the lots around here for like 10 to 15 over sticker because everybody wanted one. There's Ferraris you can get for nothing, because these owners are like, this is a money pit. This particular year was rough. The engine's unreliable, electrical systems all screwed up, and people own these vehicles, and if they get them on the road and make them look good for a weekend, and then they have to park them for 6 months because they stop working, what are you jealous of? So let's talk about the probably highest level of jealousy, which is a little bit tougher to plan to fix. And that would be your life is more than 50% over, depending on how old you might end up being. And you look around at young people and you think, my God, what I wouldn't give to be young again. Maybe you had a hard life, a really tough one. And it's still tough because, life just in some perspectives, it gets tougher and tougher as you get older. Your health doesn't necessarily get better as you get older, right? Your eyesight doesn't improve, let me tell you that much. And so you sort of allow yourself to live in a virtual world of what could have been. That's a tough one. I probably will have a version of that, but I was able to do more than I ever imagined with my life times 4 at least. But what I find, because I smoke cigars, right? And when you go to a smoke lounge where they smoke cigars, you bump into all these different people. Mine's not like any other lounge on planet Earth. Mine is, I would put it this way. If you're a deep lover of deep thoughts, you would find my smoke lounge in Huntington Beach to probably be a euphoric place for an afternoon, because we talk about all this stuff. But I run into a bunch of people that I never see again. And they come in and one guy will come in and have a cigar. In 2 seconds, he's talking about his ex-wife and how he's in the middle of the divorce, or he just finally got his divorce settlement worked out, or how his kids are no good, or, his business partners, screwed him over or whatever. But what's fascinating about it is that no matter how bad someone's story is, typically the conversation will evolve where they start talking about wonderful moments in their life. Yeah, they may have wanted, 10 times the amount of these moments, but these moments are priceless. And, most of them kind of get to the point where you get the sense they would do nothing to change those moments from occurring. Like, don't change anything, because if you change anything, these things won't happen. One of the most fascinating things that happens to a parent, and you can be a male or female, it doesn't matter, you'll have a child with someone that you eventually end up falling apart or separating from. And you really don't like them. And maybe you realize you didn't like them a lot, but you tolerated some bad condition, thinking it might get better. And then you have a child. But the child turns out pretty awesome, because you had a role in how that kid perceived reality. Sometimes you're the parent that paid more attention to the child, so the child's just de facto more like you. My hope for you is that if you're in that situation, the separation itself allows you to mend your relationship with the other person, at least to a tolerable level. You see this stuff portrayed in all kinds of series. I mean, what was it? Goliath is the new series on Amazon, I think, right? It's in its 3rd season now. That was a heavy part of the first season, I believe. But, I guess in the last few minutes here, the thing I want you to do is to reject these whole paradigms of thought. It doesn't mean by me saying that and you agreeing, yeah, let's do that it's not going to happen to you. Again, it's almost like, here's a stupid analogy, but it's like you like to lay out next to pools. You don't like to lay out on patios without water next to you. You like water. But when you're laying out, you don't want to be wet. You don't mind swimming, but when you're laying out, you don't want to be wet. And there's always someone jumping in, and there's always someone splashing somebody, and there's always people think it's funny to splash you. And let's just say you're a sensitive person to that. It's going to happen. If you sit next to a pool, it's going to happen. You got to accept it. And, just try to do your best. Sit in a place that doesn't get splashed that much. Maybe let people know not to splash you, whatever it is, or just accept it because it doesn't kill you. It doesn't mess up your tan, right? I think there was definitely a transition in my own life where I was sort of being manipulated by jealousy. I mean, again, I've shared the story when I was a kid. I lost my high school sweetheart because my jealousy was the most infinitesimal, acidic jealousy you could ever have as a human being. And I just didn't know how to manage it. I didn't even know it was, I knew it was happening, I guess, but I was just surrendering to these black apples constantly, right? I was envisioning things that weren't actually happening. I was sensationalizing things that I did see happen into things that they weren't, And when I got out of that, it helped me in life. And then as I succeeded, of course, because I knew what it was like to have nothing as a kid, when I started having things, I was very sympathetic to anyone around me that didn't have these things. And so, I did, I was just telling some friends of mine the other day, I finally laid down some money and bought a nice car, a very nice car. And it was for me because I was starting a new business in Los Angeles, and I was going to have to drive 1 hour on a good day to work. And I had a 9 a.m. daily meeting, so I had to be there on time. And even if we were late, the investor was very upset with us, okay? But I started getting a little worried because I have forgotten exactly how this occurred, but there were moments in the first year where I noticed that, if I pulled up in this car, I would get looks that weren't exactly positive looks. At my smoke lounge, we ended up watching a series that somebody edited together a bunch of videos where people with nice cars, like really $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 cars, have, people in LA who were on bicycles throw stuff at these cars. One guy jumped a fence to scratch up a Lamborghini. What kind of person does that? That's like jealousy that is just eating this person alive. Perhaps there was some personal thing between them. Didn't seem like it. But the haters can get insane. And so I felt self-conscious for quite a while until I started to accept the fact that it's like, look, okay, I worked really hard. This is the one thing I have that I think it's the most expensive object I've ever bought in my life. So I'm not full of all this, and I'm very humble about it. But sometimes you don't have any opportunity to communicate that that's how you perceive it. But there was a threshold in my life, and I don't remember when it happened, where I finally stopped, and I'm not that materialistic at all. You guys have seen the same t-shirts and pullovers, like little hoodies here, for the 4 years straight. I'm not out there trying to impress anybody like that. But you know what? I think I do know when it happened. I made music for a long time in the 90s, like I've said. Did a few video game soundtracks and ended up doing sound effects eventually. But I kept getting jobs and kept cranking out music for all kinds of private projects, weddings and presentations and all this other stuff. And finally, I pushed out my studio to I was dropping mad money on stuff. It was ridiculous. But all went in my little apartment. Nobody knew I had any of these things except the guy who was raking all the money at the music store. But I think I got it up to like $35,000 worth of new stuff. Big mixing board, brand new keyboards, synthesizers, software, computers, all this stuff. And then the jobs stopped coming. My buddy who was hiring me a lot for his game company, that game company went out of business. And there was this moment of just like lucidity of looking at all this crap. And I moved twice with this stuff, so I had to haul it around twice, which was very painful. It wasn't being turned on to do anything. And the software also got super complex at one point. It started interfering with the fluidity of making music. And I just kind of looked at my possessions and I kind of got grossed out by my own consumerism. I didn't buy it when I needed it. I bought it with the notion that I would need it, thinking it would extend my capabilities, having, millions of sounds that I could do, which ended up making it impossible to pick the candy bar out of the freaking vending machine. When you got 4 candy bars in there, it's pretty easy to make a decision. When you have 40 candy bars in there, you're standing there for 10 minutes in candy bar selection anxiety, right? I hope you get to a point at some point in your life where you do see that you have enough stuff, you have what you need. That's really all you need. When you see people live in third world countries in these little, huts. I mean, in China, they rent cages, actual cages that we would use for perhaps a large dog in your living room. People live in these cages for $150 a month. And you think, and you're like, okay, that for me would be the most claustrophobic thing I've ever experienced in my life. I would literally feel like I have devolved down to an animal. But at some point, these people decided that's all they needed. There's the kids in Japan that live at these sort of WeWork kind of places, right? Where they're like supposed to be offices, but you can rent these places 24 hours a day and sleep in these little cubicles. And they've proven that at least you can live at least an era of your life in these very limited conditions. It is my hope, of course, that this sort of stuff is not necessary in the future, but they're making homes smaller and smaller and smaller, aren't they? You want to undermine jealousy by taking control of your life such that there's nothing you can be jealous of. And the second you feel it, I want you to smile, disarm it, and if you can, turn it into inspiration if it is something you really, really want. Maybe even laugh out loud if you thought for a second you needed that, and then you think it through and you realize, oh my God, I totally don't want that. That would be a ridiculous level of burden on my life. I like my life to be very simple. I've been at a number of my friends' houses and businesses at the exact moment in time when they had to write their monthly checks. And it's usually I've come over, and either if I'm dating the girl that's doing it, who's very wealthy, or as a business buddy of mine who's, some real estate mogul guy. And I see them signing these checks because they have to sign all these checks to hand it to their accountant so we can go eat lunch or hang out for the night or whatever it is, right? And it's like 10,000 here, 12,000 here. And I'm watching, sometimes it's a bunch of checks to family who don't have jobs, that are just living off of this stash of cash that this one person's been able to manifest, permanently removing it from her or his bank account such that if they ever have a rainy day, they may not have that money. And I look at those problems and I say, man, I'm glad I lived the life I live. So I think that's about it. Again, we feel it all the time. We never talk about it. Therefore, it's an episode. That's how these episodes work. And I know they're not as sexy as the other ones, but you might find they're actually more valuable and stay with you a lot longer than what NASA did in 1969 type episode, We'll make more of those too. If you haven't been to deepthoughtsradio.com, please go. I'll make a short bumper today. There's 2 video, 2 audio, 2 social media, 2 ways to donate. I do put up a couple other links for donations. They're affiliate links products that I personally use. One is the Backblaze backup system online. I'll tell you what, I don't care if there was no affiliate program with that. It is $5 a month for two computers, infinite drives, and you can have it backed up 24 hours a day. It has recently completely saved me, as the Catalina beta ended up erasing 360 gigs of photos off my computer without my knowledge. Like months ago it did it. And so I went back up on Backblaze, looked up July was the last time I had it, and prepared it for download. You just prepare it for download. They give you a little app to download it really fast. And man, it saved my bacon. Amazing. So I don't care if we were just friends. This is a product you should get. Screw all that iCloud crap and all these pay for play stuff. Even Dropbox is 10 times more expensive than Backblaze when you really get it up to the professional level. So that's another way to do it. If you're looking for season 1 episodes in this channel, they don't exist. I'm starting to put the season 1 link in the description down below. So this video will have it. I need to go back and update 400 videos with the refresh bumper text so you can have it. But just go to the website. There's season 1 link up there. It's another channel. It's all remastered, blah, blah, blah. No ads whatsoever, so it's cool. And if you find any episodes missing, BitChute has the first 400 episodes. I still haven't finished, as of this exact moment, putting up all of season 5 stuff that we've made so far. So, but you can get over there. It's uncensored. It's fantastic. It's in 1080p, so it's great. Downloads quickly. So definitely get onto that one as well. I haven't found a single other service like BitChute. If they're trying to say they're this big freedom channel, like Brighteon, it's a joke. It's fully censored by design. Screw those guys. The other channels only have 1 hour limits. And so BitChute so far is the best YouTube replacement. Let's hopefully cross our fingers and get over there and make an account so they know you exist, so we don't lose this great opportunity. It's a shared distributed computer network, kind of like a BitTorrent, so you get all of the videos from all kinds of different computers. But until next time, take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.